Thank you. Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I hope this link works. We've had a little difficulty getting started, but this is a live tutorial session. There's no preset agenda, questions and answers and discussion. Yes, good. And if you have questions to write in, you can write them in. I'll get them on the side of my screen. There's a sidebar. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay, I can see only 2 participants listed on, shown on my screen. I'm not sure how many are attending. That doesn't matter. Let's give it a few minutes and see if more join us. I hope the link is working. I find Zoom can be erratic. I had a Zoom meeting earlier this week, and the connection was very erratic. Okay, I'll give it, it's now 12:04, I'll give it till 12:10. Let's see if anyone comes along.
Professor, can you open the YouTube link, sir? Students are putting their questions there.
That is the chat link or YouTube link?
Yes, sir. YouTube link is there. You can.
Okay, I'll go to that. I'll open it in the browser. Okay, I'm going to YouTube now. These are the delights of modern electronics. When it works, it's fantastic. Okay, just getting in. Please keep putting your questions up. Okay, we seem to be getting into YouTube. Oh, it's better. Yes, getting into YouTube, it's taking time.
Yes, sir. Few students have started in Zoom also. So, yeah, please, you can ask your questions to with Professor.
Good, good. Yes, please do. Go ahead. I've got YouTube and Zoom open. I'm not getting any questions in from the chat in the sidebar, but I'm not sure why. Trying to get into YouTube. Yeah, coming up. Good. Yes, here we are. YouTube screen open. Shall I go to play? Yes, there's a I want to headaches with and connectivity is all right at this end at my end. Why this is taking so long? Okay, I'm on the yes, getting.
Yeah, please. You can ask your questions to Professor.
Good, good. YouTube, it's taking time. Good, good. Yes, please. I've got YouTube and Zoom. I'm not getting any questions in from the chat. In the sidebar, but I'm not sure why. Try to get into YouTube. Yes, coming up. Good. Yes, here we are. The open. Shall I go to play? Okay, but yes, there's a Zoom link given on the right of the YouTube screen. I got to headaches with the Zoom link to back to. And connectivity is all right at this end, at my end. Zoom link, can you all see that?
Please can ask your questions.
Good, good. Yes, please do. Start here. Not YouTube and Zoom open. Okay, to session. I'll answer. No. Yeah. I'll questions anyway. And I hope we may need need further documentation. Remember, Mussolini saw fascism as a way of uniting the country. But nevertheless, Italian fascism does retain an element of racism. It was much strongly and I hope you'll find an academic database. I'm not sure past what is cosmopolitan. Speak a range of languages and respond to a lot of cultures and an international background may have is a relatively global, usually writes experiment. I've been quite critical of it in my paper for a range of reasons. Maybe the reason besides others of reason identified and migration policies as a note. By civil war, sometimes civil place in conditions of enormously significant ethnic catastrophes have expanded their holdings and plans for issues arise. It will find that ideological issues arise over things like political membership, rights of refugees and asylum. Or extremely violent treatment or exclusion from political pursuit as an adjective. So one you might say, well, you know, is relatively liberal theory. Certain people are more associated than others. Certain.
Hello, sir. Hello. Yes, sir.
A global might want to look at this on cosmopolitan field of liberalism. I've been quite critical of it in my paper for a range of reasons. Mainly the reasons as of liberalism. Can we put climate refugees? Yes, climate refugees are sometimes civil space in conditions of face. Enormously significant things come out about the fact, for example, that many of the oil or exploration will find that ideological issues and asylum or burden the refugees. Yes, refugees. Jewish. Try again. Okay. Okay. I'm on the mic. Okay, I guess to listen to my answers earlier. Cosmopolitanism. Try Anthony Giddens, Giddens. There's a range of people who have put forward cosmopolitan theory. I think Mary Kaldor, Kaldor. They were associated, I think, late 90s, early 2000s. But there have been some fairly good critiques of cosmopolitanism as well. Any other questions? Do please raise them. Perhaps I can ask you something. How are you getting on with preparing the draft essay? It's a practice essay to give you an idea how it's done, what to focus on, and just follow the instructions. If you need any clarification, do raise the point here. Okay, yeah. I've given you examples of cosmopolitan thinkers, David Held, H-E-L-D. Right, one of you has asked a question about how Tagore was a cosmopolitan thinker. Do you mean how, in what way he was a cosmopolitan thinker? Tejesh Khodke, you've asked that question. Well, the answer is quite simply read Tagore. There's a fascinating collection of correspondence. I think it's a professor at the Indian Statistical Institute, and she's gone into all the letters, over 1,000 letters, long letters that were exchanged between Tagore and Gandhi and Andrews, Charlie Andrews, who was a Protestant minister. He was a priest who went to meet Gandhi in London, I think about 1906, or went to listen to Tagore. And Tagore said, go and meet Gandhi. I think that was it. Professor Gokhale told him. And the three of them exchanged letters for 20 or 30, I think maybe 30 years or more after that, 40 years perhaps. Now, of course, they disagreed with each other, but Tagore's, what comes out in that collection of letters, I think this lady is professor of, hello, yes? Can you hear me? What came out is the sheer width and range of Tagore's thinking. For him, as a writer, all humanity. I've written a review of this book. It's edited by, I'm trying to think who's edited it. I really can't. It might have been, oh, it was this lady from the Statistical Institute, ISI in Calcutta, Indian Statistical Institute. I've written a review of this in the Hindu. I wrote that about 3 years ago. Please have a look for it. Sivaramakrishnan and Tagore or Gandhi or Andrews will get you the link when you do a search. But Tagore disagreed with Gandhi at times because he saw the whole world as the space for all humanity. And in that sense, he was a cosmopolitan, but in a rather different way from the political theorists of recent times, such as David Held or Anthony Giddens and Mary Kaldor. I hope that answers your question or helps to address it. Such technical issues. Any other questions from you? Yes, one of you mentioned, yes, Mayank, you've mentioned the hierarchies within society. Well, what I would say, Mayank, is yes, this is a good question, but remember, you don't have to be on the far right to support the idea of a hierarchical society. Have you read the chapter on conservatism? Certain conservatives have been very strong in resisting and rejecting fascism, but they can live with hierarchy. And strong, serious conservative thinkers consider that hierarchies are natural. That's in the chapter. And they, according to them, hierarchies are part of a stable natural order. This has been called Darwinist, as you know, right? And yes, have a look at the libertarians or anarcho-libertarians. You'll find some work on them in the chapter on anarchism. Have a look, and don't assume that anarchism will automatically lead to the collapse of society. Have a look at the paper by Anderson and Hill, which I've covered in the anarchism chapter. This was on the Wild West, on the colonization of the Wild West by white American settlers in the United States, in this enormous continent. It really is colossal. In a sense, you've got to see it or go there to see just how big it is. They had to create their own societies as they moved westwards because they were outside the then jurisdiction of the constituted United States. And they devised their own shared public institutions. Now, Anderson and Hill have written a great deal on this. Much of their work is freely accessible on the net. I've covered a paper that they wrote in the book in the chapter on liberalism. No, anarchist societies are nothing like chaotic, and very serious attempts have been made. Have a look at the Christiania Foundation, Freetown Christiania in Copenhagen in Denmark. There have been other very successful. Have a look at the successful historical record of Catalonia during the period leading up to the Spanish Civil War. Anarchy does not. Anarchy may be chaos, but anarchism is a very serious political philosophy. And as for conservatives, well, think of some of the consequences, right? If you're born into a high class and privilege, yes, you learn authority, you learn position, and you learn authority. It's been said, you may have heard the term the officer class. But are we then right to say that no one else is entitled to advance in society? And that's a serious problem for conservatism, right? For plenty, there have been serious tensions over this, particularly in the Industrial Revolution, when new methods of accounting became very widespread, and very talented people from outside the aristocracy started to set up huge businesses, helped, of course, by the fact of empire and imperial plunder. But they demanded social and political recognition, not for everyone, but for their class. Now, the conservative might say, well, hold on, you're not the right class, right? So, you know, conservatism isn't quite as consistent as it may look. And there are criticisms of it it does have great strengths, but I put criticisms in as well in the chapter on conservatism, right? Don't confuse anarchy with anarchism either. Anarchism is nothing to do with chaotic anarchy. Yeah, please have a look at the chapters again. Okay, Tejesh, you've asked a question about thinkers being involved in real politics. Yes, that's absolutely right. Not all political thinkers are involved in political activity, and not all people in practical politics are great political thinkers. You'll find this recognized as far back as the work of Aristotle. Aristotle actually says, I think in his great book, The Politics, or was it The Ethics? I can't remember which one, but I think in The Politics, he said an awful lot of people are great political actors and act with good judgment and poise and insight without being political thinkers. It's not necessarily that they have to be political thinkers. Think of Roosevelt and the New Deal in the United States, right? And so there are no criteria for who is and is not a political thinker. We often have to take politicians' thinking very seriously indeed, but you can be an extremely fine political thinker and hugely influential. Think of Plato, without being involved in everyday active politics. Think of just how much John Locke in a minor way was a politician, but his impact has gone far beyond his actual impact in politics, right? So we don't have to be a political thinker and be a politician. We don't have to be a politician and be a political thinker. There are no criteria. People will think, argue, and discuss politics because we're human, as Aristotle says. It is the faculty of language that makes us zoa politica, political beings. And that's why the political space is open to everyone, right? It is an egalitarian space, but we don't have to be a political actor in order to be a political thinker or in order to have a great deal of impact on the political space. I hope that goes some way towards addressing your question. Any other questions? Anything else you'd like to say? Right, eco-anarchism. Good question. Gina, you've asked a question about eco-anarchism and whether it opposes the kinds of things that are done in current environmental issues. Would you call Greta Thunberg an eco-anarchist? She might be one.
Yes, sir. I would love to call her that.
Yeah, but take a look at the thinking and what she says we should do. And if she reaches people, well, you know. Okay, the other thing you might want to look at is this. Have a look at attempts to establish anarchist practice. I think in the seminar documents you'll find material on Argentina, and you'll find various attempts to establish eco-anarchistic communities. The question about point about eco-anarchism, also is a good question, would be, well, how are we to act as eco-anarchists, and how are we to organize an eco-anarchist society, excuse me, so that we have the maximum freedom for action while still protecting the environment. So take a look at that. There are eco-anarchist movements around, and certainly Greta Thunberg has been a great inspiration. So the question then is, you know, do we have to have states in order to sort out our current environmental catastrophe, if we'll ever sort it out, that is? Quite a lot of people say, and they don't have to be socialists to say this, say that the state is the only body that is big enough and powerful enough to join with other states in addressing our environmental crisis. Right? For example, COP26 is due to be held, I think, in Scotland later this year, and most of the states in the world will be represented there. But an eco-anarchist might say, well, look, these are states as we have them today, and they do significantly repress individual freedoms, right? Or they don't take sufficient account of what ordinary people think on the ground and what ordinary people's lives are like. So that's a very good question. Where does eco-anarchism stand in relation to current environmental issues? You will find eco-anarchist writings on this. Ecofeminism, well, you can have any opinion you like, right? But argue for it, right? If you have examples of the blame placed by ecofeminism or ecofeminists on male institutions, well, yes, I know it may look as if I've said that in the book, in the chapter on feminism, but I'm just really summarizing and compressing ecofeminist thinking. There is, for example, there's empirical evidence to support the ecofeminist argument. About 2 years ago, I had the good fortune to review a book on Gandhi's political economy, written by 3 noted scholars on Gandhi, Nadkarni, Sivanna, and Suresh. And I reviewed it in the Hindu. I think I was approached to do it. I was asked to do the review. One of the things they bring out is that, I think it's in there, that where rural panchayats are headed by women or have a good proportion of women on them, they are less corrupt and they're very much better at doing the basics, getting water supply, power supply, schools and education running and functioning than male-dominated panchayats. Now, whether that example would actually, do all that it might seem to do is another matter, but that point is noted in the empirical detail on the functioning of panchayats. So ecofeminists might have a point there, right? Yes, it may be a very powerful argument, get the men out of this, and you can have any opinion you like, but you'll have to argue for it with evidence and handle the counter evidence. Yeah, no strong philosophy? Well, perhaps he doesn't need one. Get out there and do it. Yeah. For example, it's very noticeable, it's still the case that women do far more work in the home than men, right? And means gardening, cooking, shopping, making sure the house is functioning. That's widely publicly noted in the world, even in countries where we might think gender equality has gone much further, such as parts of Scandinavia or whatever. Yeah. Yes, you're welcome to have your opinion by all means, but argue for it and get evidence for it, please. Yeah. And then show it, show it with evidence and handle the counter arguments. Any other questions? Anything else you'd like to raise? Mayank, you've asked the question, was Ted Kaczynski an eco-fascist? If he was called Ted, he was probably American. We pronounce Kaczynski. The Polish pronunciation would probably be Kaczynski. Don't worry about that too much. It's just a bit of background. An eco-fascist, I don't know. I haven't encountered any of the work. Your mention of him is the first I've ever heard. I'll have a look. Please, by all means, read about him. You will. Do you remember in the chapter on ecologism, I have covered certain fascist tendencies in ecologism and in environmental movements. The Nazis, for example, remember Walter Darre was the one who coined the term blood and soil, and there are elements of ecological theories which come close to fascism. Much less so today, but there are plenty of people say, you still see it on the message boards in social media and so on. People saying, oh, we're overpopulated. Is that true? Well, it is said that the Earth's population, the Earth can support 10 10 billion people. We currently have about 7.5 or something like that. So we waste colossal amounts of food, enormous amounts. So have a look at the theory of fascism, have a look at Kaczynski's thinking, put the two together and try and reach an informed conclusion as to whether Ted Kaczynski is or is not an eco-fascist. Okay, Gina, you've raised a point here about ecofeminism. Yes, you can have any opinion you like, by all means. Can you argue for it? Is it right to blame patriarchy? Well, historically, since it is thought that so there is some evidence that since the advent of, I'll come back to your question, point, Mayank, I'll answer Regina first. Since the advent of settled agriculture, possibly 10,000 years ago, possibly earlier than that, almost certainly in the area we now call Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in the Middle East, Iraq. Today, since then, it is likely that human societies have become much more gender divided, have been much more gender divided. There is some anthropological evidence, if I'm not mistaken, that hunter-gatherer societies have much less by way of gender divisions in the ways they work, in the ways they do things. Historically, men have dominated, publicly dominated public life, politics, education, access to the professions, you name it. So, so yes, it's a good point. Is it enough just to blame patriarchy? It may not be enough just to blame patriarchy, but the evidence for the damage done by patriarchy is pretty terrible. It has sometimes been said, and we haven't, historically we haven't much evidence for this, that societies run by women would have much less war. That's perfectly, we can see why that is said. There would probably be much less physical violence. There may be other kinds of violence, don't forget, but there might be much less physical violence and much less war. Okay, Mayank, you've brought a point to our attention about Ted Kaczynski. The Industrial Revolution, well, you can say that again. It has had appalling consequences. It has largely been driven, and you'll find this in the chapter on Marx, by industrial capitalism. Could it be that we could have had an other kind of industrial revolution? Perfectly possible. I say that because a great many tremendous inventions have been crushed by the forces of industrial capital. I'll give you an example. If I'm not mistaken, in the late 60s, one of the big American auto manufacturers invented a perfectly functioning electric car. If I'm not mistaken, the other auto manufacturers, that I think they're called the Big Six or something like that, so the other five, if I'm not mistaken, told this particular manufacturer that they would drive that manufacturer out of business if they persisted with this invention. So yes, there's a great deal of evidence that the Industrial Revolution has been a disaster, but remember, the internal organization of the Industrial Revolution has also got to be considered. We must also remember that both the Soviet Union and China attempted industrialization under their state-directed, state capitalist societies. They've been called state capitalists, nothing unusual about that, under their, if you like, top-down single-party societies. And the environmental damage caused in the Soviet Union, in China, and in the GDR, and I saw it myself in Poland, was often absolutely terrible. So it could be that industrialization, uncontrolled industrialization, is the problem. It could also be that industrialization under capitalist systems of organization is part of the problem. That, of course, would need much closer analysis, and those are significant issues. I'm interested in being clear about the history of them. If that's what Kaczynski has done, well, I'll certainly look up the work, and if anyone else wants to, yes, please do so. But you could then decide if there's an element of eco-fascism in Kaczynski's thinking, an implicit element or perhaps an explicit element. I hope that helps, Mayank. Any other questions you'd like to raise? It's good that you've attended. I think this week is the start of, or week 9, that's next week. No, it's weeks 8 to 11 is the draft essay assignment. I do advise you to do that. Yep, just try it out. It'll show you how to write the essays for the exam. Yep, and read the example essay that I've sent as well. I'll show you how it's done. You've raised good questions, all of you. Yes, there have always been good questions from all these tutorials. And I hope this record will be kept available to you. Well, thank you, Ajina. I hope you find what I say helpful. These kinds of subjects are always exploratory. There are no easy answers. There may be no answers ultimately, but we can learn more about our world, learn about the implications of what we say and do, learn about the thinking that we express explicitly or implicitly. And I hope what I've said has been helpful.
Yes, sir. Definitely, we will explore further, sir.
Yeah, and many of the questions you raise are related to issues in the book. That's quite right. Have a look again, see what's been said, and I hope this will help you to keep reading and to understand what's going on around you, say in the news or in any other current affairs or in longer term policy. Any more live sessions? We'll probably have one more. I'll let you know the date. We're coming to the end of week 8, I think. So we might have one in about week 11. And I hope we'll get a better connection then. We just can't tell. I had a Zoom meeting with some friends here in the UK. I'm still under lockdown, by the way. And I had to abandon it because my connection, I was only looking at short distances, 60 or 70 miles for, between all of us. But yes, probably in week 11, I'll let everyone know, of course, as usual. Is 3 or 4 days enough notice for you? Okay, good. Yeah, I contact NPTEL on the campus, and they send out the notice. Any other points you'd like to raise? I've just got a suggestion for you. I think I said it in the introductory announcement at the beginning of the course. Have a look at some of the international press. Many of them are very sharp and very forceful. I mentioned the New York Times, the Guardian, the British paper, The Independent. Have a look at the German news magazine, Der Spiegel. Spiegel International is in English. And they carry long analyses of major issues around the world. And have a look at the Indian news magazines. There's a lot of excellent ones. Have a look at the front pages of any of the more authoritative papers. You'll find the center page of the Hindu carries a lot of heavyweight articles. The others tend not to, but there are other places you'll get good analyses as well. Yeah, so try those and see. Just a suggestion for you. Look at my name and Tagore, just put in Sivaramakrishnan and Tagore Sivaramakrishnan. You'll find a review in the Hindu. And if you also put in my name and Sivanna or Suresh, Lavanya Suresh, or Nadkarni, you'll find a review in the Hindu. And those books do address the kinds of questions you've raised. And I hope a review will give you, a summary of their arguments. Anything else you'd like to raise? Well, it looks as though doing things by audio helps because we use less bandwidth. I did that for my online teaching last semester. So, okay. If you're all right, shall we call a halt here? It's 10 minutes. We've used 50 minutes already. I'll stay if you'd like to stay for the full hour. I should certainly stay. Good question. Yeah, my own good question. Yes, the campus was closed down on about the 20th of March 2020, as were almost all campuses in India, and schools and colleges were students were sent home. Excuse me. We completed that semester that was the first semester of 2020 online. The second semester I conducted entirely online. All of us did. Yes, classes as usual. I think there are some lab classes going on and the students are invited, but under very tightly controlled conditions. But yes, I do my teaching depending on the courses I've been given, and do that all online. It meant pre-recording the lectures and putting them up in an assigned Google Drive space, and then having seminars, one seminar a week for discussion. So yes, we're working online almost all around the world. And there we are, not surprising. You may or may not know that, for example, the Tamil Nadu state government requisitioned thousands of hostel rooms across campuses all across the state. Now, we at IIT Madras are central government, but we were more than happy to participate. And I think our senior administrators offered collaboration help with the state government. Even we locked down before the state government instructed us to. And we were more than happy to collaborate and participate with them, quite rightly. So yes, we do this all online. I hope that answers your question, but we've been doing this now for a year. We've got 5 minutes or so if you'd like to raise any other points or float a few ideas, by all means do. Okay, if you haven't any questions, I hope if you've got questions, put them up on the forum. I look at them every few days. And from what you've said, you're all thinking about the issues, you're all engaging with them, and that's extremely good to see. We'll probably have another session in week 11, possibly a little bit earlier in week 11, so that'll be in about 2 weeks' time and a little bit. Next week, I think, is week 9. Okay, so we'll do that then. And you could raise questions if you like about preparing for the exam or approaching the essays and so on, but anything related to the course. Yeah. Okay, shall we call a halt there? Well, thanks to Mr. Balaji. He's done a great deal to make this work, and he saw us through the technical hitches at the beginning. And I look forward to seeing you next time if you'd like to attend. Okay, shall we call the halt there? Okay, well, keep safe, everyone. Look after yourselves. Yes, good question. A separate group. You can, of course, set up your own discussion groups with your classmates, by all means. Is that what you meant? And political discussions, aren't we having them here? May not be what you consider politics, but, you know, liberalism, John Locke, Marx, anarchism, conservatism, these are not political subjects. Yes, you can always
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. Hello. Hello, sir. Hello.